It's Friday, so we have Mindshift Friday. This is where we get to discuss very interesting things and shift your mind a bit. Today, it's all about diffusion of responsibility or mob psychology. This is going to be an interesting one. I've got two amazing guests joining me in studio via Zoom. We have got Dr. Elizabeth Gishimu, a clinical psychologist. Daktari, how are you doing?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. We also have my good friend, John Willis Njoroge, a mentor and a psychotherapist. My friend, how are you doing?
Very well. Good to
Karibu
see
sana.
you. Asante.
I rarely see you in a tie. What's happening today? Are we going for a wedding?
Today, it's because you refused to return my jacket.
Nice one there, nice one. Let me begin with Dr. Elizabeth. When we talk about diffusion of responsibility, what exactly are we talking about here? Give us a definition.
Thank you so much, John. So, when we talk about diffusion of responsibility, just think about it as human beings, all of us must be accountable in one way or the other, right? And one of the reasons why we must be accountable is because when we live together in a society as a community, as people, if somebody is not playing their part or somebody is not participating as they are expected to do, it means that something is going to go wrong. And therefore, when it comes now to how we relate and how we come together, so to speak, in a cohesive way, it must be in a manner that does not affect the other person, does not impact another person in a negative light, right? So what we must bear in mind is that as human beings, in order for the society to function or things to go as in our case, because we are believers, as God ordained it to be, then everybody must play their part.
Yes.
And if somebody neglects that, then you see it creates room for what do you call it? Like life does not like a vacuum, isn't it? Right? So if one is not playing their role, then there'll be a vacuum. And of course, that vacuum is open to anything to fill it. And in this case, when we talk about, again, in our context now, mob psychology, of course, there's a lot of things then that would bring about people to come together, so to speak. And in mob psychology, you have both the positive element to it and the negative element to it.
Okay.
And of course, what you want to do is minimize the negative aspects of that, because of course the negative aspect tends to always have destructive consequences.
Okay. I'm just wondering, John Wills, how does this affect the individual? How does this diffusion of responsibility or mob psychology affect me as an individual if I'm in this group?
I think one of the things that we may need to identify is that it's actually a place of comfort, because we all have desire to escape from pain and stress, and so we find it as a place of comfort. And I know in the past we have had a conversation where I said that mob psychology uses the smallest brain in that group.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is we are a traumatized society, and this sense of desire to escape from pain and stress gives us a place of belonging. And so this group becomes our immediate family. And so as a result of that, you find that people are able to lie to themselves that they're actually processing the reality that they are facing at the moment. But I can honestly say that it's as Dr. said, it has positive and negative effects. How does it affect me? One, it will it's a place of belonging. Then number two, also defining my values, because I attach my values to the group that I belong to, and it gives me a sense of adequacy in a society. Yeah.
Okay. The whole aspect of values, I find it very interesting, Daktari, because sometimes I find that when you're part of a group, sometimes you tend to put your values aside because of what is happening within the group and what the group is going through. Let me use the current situation that we are facing, and I know, John, you had sent me an article you had written about this, the school fires. You know, I don't think any student in their right mind would set a school on fire. But then we have all these fires going on, and I'm just wondering, is this in play when we talk about diffusion of responsibility, mob psychology? Because we are many, and like John, you said, the smallest brain is the one we use. I don't know what you think about. Am I far-fetched in my thinking, Daktari?
That's to nitpick on what John has said. Whereby we are a traumatized lot. Yeah, and what tends to happen is that depending on how you have, can I say, packaged that trauma, of course it's going to impact on how you relate, how you participate in society. And the tendency, of course, again, just pick on what I said earlier on, that we live in a community, we are a society. As human beings, we are wired for connection. And of course, the tendency is always to move towards people who you feel you have a lot in common. Now, in a case of mob psychology, so picture this, you're traumatized, okay? And then you're gravitating towards people who you have a lot in common. What do you think is going to come to the fore? Of course, what is obviously going to unite you is your trauma. You know, the similarities that you have in that sense. And when you're in a group, the tendency is normally now to abandon your own agency, okay, and to become, you know, it's sort of like you're taken up by the mentality of the group. So to speak, it's not so much that you're not what do you call it? You're not using your brain, but in this sense, it's sort of like the force, or the whatever has brought all of you together seems to be what is at play here. Okay, and in that context, of course, it's no longer about you as an individual. It's now about us as a group, and what is this that has brought us together? What is the goal? What are we channeling, so to speak, this energy that we have brought together towards, you know, what is the goal here? And someone said, there's a social psychologist who said that hate tends to unite a lot more than love. So in this case, like if you're talking about people being destructive, of course, you see that's hate, hate, right? And it tends to pull a lot more, right, than when you're working towards something positive, so to speak.
Okay, John, you want to add something to that?
Sure. I think it is very important for us to realize that we you know, most of the time I've had people talk about children of nowadays, they were not raised that way, and such things. But children of nowadays are raised by parents who are traumatized. And those parents who are raised by parents who are traumatized. And so how we were raised is how our parents dealt with trauma. How we are dealing with these adolescents, it's how that's how we are dealing with our trauma. And it is very, very important, as Dr. has said, that pain tends to unite more than love. And mainly it's because Pastor James, when if I fall to sin or if I offend you, I will come to you and just tell you that I am only human. But rarely do we say that I am only human when I am kind, when I am affirming, when I am loving and all that. And I think we need to change the narrative and say that we are human when we are kind. We are human when we are gentle. We are human when we are loving. We are human when we have self-control. So that the younger generation can actually get to see that humanity, it's not about abuse. Because we tend to frame it that way, that I am just human because I have abused you or because I have mistreated you in one way or the other.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I want to say is that this trauma, especially for the schools, it's something that has happened since, I think, 1918. And so it is not something new in our society. And so over 100 years, we've not been able to come up with a way to address this issue as a people. And what we fail to realize is that time does not weaken the influence of the past. And we need to accept that time, when we ignore trauma, time actually strengthens that trauma as we move forward. And actually, I'm really disappointed, especially where we tell parents that you have to pay for this, and we try to attach this trauma to a monetary value. And it's because a traumatized society is a society that says, accept and move on. And I think that's where we have gone wrong.
Wow. You know, we've talked about, when we talk about mob psychology, we've talked about good and bad. Maybe we can dig in a bit deeper on that, Dr. Ari, and give examples. You know, I find that sometimes as a mob, maybe you don't do because you assume somebody will do. Or you do because you assume it's not just me. Even John Wills was there. Even Dr. Elizabeth was there. Why are you just blaming me? So maybe explain a bit further where the good and the bad extremes are concerned so we can gain a deep understanding into this.
Yes. So one of the things to understand is that, of course, when you're making judgment or making decision, there's the part of the brain that is concerned with that. Yeah, we talk of it as the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex. I will try not to be very technical, but that is the part of the brain that we use to make decisions, to make judgments, and that sort of thing. Okay, and of course, what informs how well that will function? There's a lot of factors. By the time you're coming together as a group, of course, just to maybe pick on something that John has said about, we are not just now, we are a history of a lot of things, isn't it? Right? So who we are right now is as a result of how we were raised by our parents, who in turn are a result of who raised them, and so on and so forth. And therefore, how we think and what we tend to gravitate towards, of course, we will attract people who have more or less the same kind of traits and kind of things that we have in common. Now, just to go to what you've asked about what is the positive element, right? Just to differentiate between the positive element of mob psychology and the negative element. So one of the things, like for example, if we even think about why we were colonized, we are free. How did we achieve that? It's because we came together as a people, as a group, isn't it, right? And what united us at that point it was for a sense of there's injustice that has been being perpetrated, and we need to rid ourselves of that, isn't it? Bring it again now to even our current reality. When you look at even the events that have happened, for example, we had the Westgate massacre, we had the Dusit 2, we had the what do you call it? The first one, the bomb blast. You saw how people mobilized. You know, at that point, it wasn't about who are you and that sort of thing. It's we need to get people safe. Even the Garissa massacre as well. Whenever we've had this sort of situations which call for a force to be mobilized, right, to work together, Kenya for Kenyans, when there was the drought issue. And even when you look at social media, whenever somebody puts out a call, they're in distress, people tend to gather together to do good, you see. So in that sense, you can say mob psychology And I think it's just that element of our humanity. You know, we all at one point, you know, go through challenges and that sort of thing. So I think that aspect to who we are tends to mobilize us to want to lift each other and to get ourselves out of a dark place.
Yeah.
Now, there on the other element to that, of course, that same pull on a negative angle to it is, for example, the post-election violence. How do you get so many people to come together, you know, and, you know, you've been living with your neighbor, but at this one moment, suddenly they are this monster, they're this ugly person, right? Then come again also currently now with all the social media, whereby somebody puts out something about somebody, and because it generates, you know, such a negative thing. I don't know this person, just because someone has said one thing about them that is negative, I have no other prior information. Yet I choose, you know, to participate in so-called mob lynching, cyberbullying, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's because at this point, of course, what has happened now to your brain, when you're pulled towards something that you know, feel deeply within yourself. Because either something you experience an injustice, and so you see, and a lot of us now, someone has managed to channel, you know, and pull in us that element of an injustice that was done to us, and then we see, this person, you know, is a representation of something that happened, right? So we send that energy. It's so very easy for that energy to be directed. And most of the times at this point, because you're no longer thinking rationally, you're not using your part of the brain that is supposed to help with rationality. Now what has been activated is your emotional element of the brain. So of course, now that one, it means it can, you know, go either way. And just to add on to what you said about the adolescent, you see adolescents' brains are still forming, and which means, and what we know is that the emotional brain is fully formed, but the part of the brain that is responsible for making rational decision and thought, that tends to take a bit longer to develop. Likely they approximate by the age of 25, it's when it will fully be formed. So you see, in that sense, if this person is charged or is made to feel a certain type of way, it's very easy for them to act, or they are very easy to be manipulated and controlled, because rationality, they don't have capacity to fully, you know, what do you call it, make sound and grounded decisions.
Okay. John, there's also the other aspect. Maybe you can talk to us a bit about this. I find that sometimes when you have a group of people, no one is willing to do something. I even see this in church. You make an altar call, no one is willing to come. When the first person raises their hand, suddenly there are 100 hands, and you're thinking, what were you guys waiting for? Or you're in number 3, and the music they have put, oh my goodness, you're squirming in your seat. No one is saying anything, everybody's looking outside the window. Until one person decides to say something, and then everybody joins in, hey. Why does that happen? What's the reasoning behind that kind of an effect?
I would say, thank you for that. I would say that it's partly, one is our upbringing, because how we correct children. Where do I even start? Let me go even deeper. I've been working, volunteering in a public hospital, and I realized that mothers who are stressed, their children tend not to add weight fast. And so they spend a lot of time in hospital, because children are not feeding well because they're not bonding well with the parents. And you find that these mothers who are stressed, they're not able to express milk very well because of stress. And so to answer your question, I would say that it is our upbringing, from the bonding that we've had with our parents, and going to school. When we were in school, speaking up was labeled as maybe snitching. Actually, when you are in primary school and high school, courage is snitching. But when you get out, everyone wants you to be courageous. And so people actually get confused by that. And so I would say we all desire to see someone make the first move. Now, the person who makes the first move, remember, this person is also gambling, because he can make the first move and everyone else stands against him.
Yes.
Or he remains to be the only one who has made the first move. So actually, the act of courage can be traumatizing also. And you realize, like now in a matatu, there's a time we were overcharged some years back. And I said, no, I'm not going to pay that amount. And the conductor told me, if you want to alight, just alight. Driver, smamisha, shuka. Everyone else paid more.
Wow.
So you see, next time, if I would really want to speak up, it will become very, very hard.
Because no one backed you up the last time.
Yeah. And I think it is the high time for us to start rewarding acts of courage, especially among our children, and also affirming courage between us as adults. And finally, I would say we also need to treat women well, not to stress them, because when they're in that hospital, bonding with the child and they're stressed, then we actually channeling out traumatized children from birth.
Okay. If you have any questions for us today, 20316 is the SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786316316. I remembered this story about 4 people. It says everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job that needed to be done. Everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. It's a tongue twister, but I think it brings out what we are talking about. I want to tie this to what both of you mentioned, trauma. And sometimes I wonder, John, is it that we are such a traumatized nation or community? Because I look at some things we can actually do, but we are always waiting for somebody to do them for us. It's like we are waiting for our knight in shining armor. Anybody could do it, but nobody did it, and then we blame each other. Is it because of the trauma we have gone through? Are we that much traumatized as a nation, as a community? Especially when sasa tunaenda elections, mob psychology will kick in. In fact, it has already kicked in. John, tell me, what are your thoughts?
My brother, yes, we are a traumatized society. And how are we traumatized? As Dr. highlighted about colonialism, that happened, and we got our independence, but we didn't get healing of the trauma that we experienced as a nation. And as a result of that, these parents gave birth to children who are also traumatized. In the early 80s, our economy started behaving badly. Early 90s, multipartism. And currently, we're also saying that the cost of living is high. And so looking at all those things, you realize that when we are explaining trauma, we cannot just approach it from a psychological point of view. We must also look at the environment. We must also look at the economic aspect of it. We must also look at the spiritual aspect of it. Because as I said earlier, that time does not weaken the influence of the past. What we realize is that yes, we are traumatized, and that's why we behave the way we do. And some of the actions that we see in our society is a way of escaping pain and stress. And I was reading somewhere that actually the level of the rates that we see rising of terminal illness and things like cancer, they're actually propelled by lack of human connection. Because when people come together, when people connect, And you see, for mob psychology, what we are looking at is what would give us a sense of adequacy in the society. And most of the time, we are not looking at how we can connect to promote each other.
Yeah.
How we can connect to bring healing in the society. And so I think it's the high time for us to build genuine understanding and dialogue, whereby we can visit our trauma and at the same time be in a position to help each other to heal. Are we traumatized? Yes. Why? 2002, after elections, you saw what happened. We had a bit of chaos. 2007, 2008, it happened. 2013, we had chaos. We are talking about 2022, and we always come together asking ourselves, how are we going to mitigate this thing? I would encourage us to do it, to start from trauma. And as the South African scholars would put it, healing of a nation starts from addressing trauma, not just addressing the systems. Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting you've brought that up, because I was going to ask, and somebody else is asking also, how do we turn this around? Because when mobs come together, interesting things happen when mob comes together. I don't know if you've ever encountered John or Daktari. You're busy driving, Sunday cruise, sun is shining, and then there was a football. Yes, and then it hits you as you're heading towards Nya Stadium. There was a football match today, AFC and Gor Mahia. There they are. Wamejaza barabara. They are coming towards you, and you panic because you know in a mob like this, something can happen and no one will take responsibility. You know, or ukigonga mtu anduthi. Oh my goodness. Where they come from, I don't know. And it's almost like when we are in a mob, our thinking capacity shrinks. And we want to vent out. It's like there's something driving us to vent out and to act because we know no one will take responsibility. See, Mimi, John was there, Daktari was there, Sylvia was there, Bosco was there. So how do we change this narrative? That's the question. How do we change this?
And you know, as John was talking and how he kept referencing trauma, I think if we look at trauma as what happened inside of you as a result of what happens to you. What happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you, which means there's you see, you disconnect from yourself, you disconnect from your humanity. And why do you do that? Because the event was too painful. So the only way your brain can protect you is to disconnect you, so that you don't feel that magnitude of pain. Because what we need to do, it can overwhelm you. It can make you, you know, it can even maybe kill you, so to speak. So now, put many of us who are that disconnected, right? And so when we all come together, it means what we are operating on. Because when you're in a mob, it's now it's sort of like it's more about the emotions than anything else. Right? Rationality is through the window. Yeah. So if you're talking about even shifting from just, you know, so that at every one time you always engage with your rationality, so to speak. It's not that the emotions take over you. Healing means we need that part that was disconnected as a result of what happened, that part that made us, you know, dissociate from our humanity so that we could survive whatever happened. We need to find a way to reconnect that back, bring back our humanity, which means even when a lot of us have reconnected back, and that is a process that takes you as an individual, you know, re-examining yourself, and also we coming together as a community. You see, the way we are having this discussion is one way, bringing this to consciousness. You know, this is how you disconnected as a result of what happened to you, right? So you need to you know, start looking at some of these things, the way I think, the way I look at life, the way I move in life. How much of it am I moving with this dissociation? So reconnecting start that healing, start, coming together and having more of these spaces where we can be able to talk about how disconnected we are, reconnecting ourselves. And then likely will make a shift, into how we move in life. It will at least bring a bit of sanity, in the sense that we will no longer just be at any one point. It's not just, it's not easy to be triggered, to start working just on your emotional brain without engaging your rationality.
Okay. Imagine my time is up. I'll give you a minute for a parting shot. Time went so fast. Where did the time go? John, what would your parting shot be?
I think from just to also contribute from that question that you have asked, I think in mob psychology, a traumatized person in a mob will act to reassert an image of personal strength. And so it's a place where someone feels safe to express himself or herself.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, when Jesus came, he came to deal with trauma.
I like that.
Because we were a traumatized society. He died on the cross because of our trauma.
Yes.
And he had dialogue with people. So we need to have dialogue with each other.
I love that. Daktari, parting shot.
Yes, so there's this quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, which he said that to live is to suffer, and to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. While yes, we are traumatized, the fact that we are still here means there's a resilience element to who we are. Yeah. So it's not just, our story is not just about trauma. However, because there's elements to us that clearly need to be healed.
Yeah.
So just a call to all of us, do more of looking inside of you. Which are these elements? When I act, how I act, if alone, even when you're in a crowd, when you're alone, how you react to things. For example, if John says something that I don't find pleasing, the way I react immediately, you know, where is that coming from? And do I need to do a lot more healing? Because it's in that healing of self that even when you're in a crowd that is charged, it will be much easier for you to stand your ground and not necessarily be moved or swayed towards, especially when it's acting in a self-destructive manner.
Very, very true. Thank you so much. I love what both of you have shared, and I'm reminded that even the Bible tells us, though we are in the world, in the crowd of this world, we are not of this world. And so we should not be swayed in the direction the world is going and by the emotions of the world and by what's trending and by what's popular. No. Christ has given us power, love, and a sound mind, and he came to heal trauma. John Willis, I thank you for that. Daktari, thank you very much. My time is up for today. Thank you for being a part of Mindshift Friday. Thank you for watching. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified whenever we upload new, fresh content every day. Stay tuned and enjoy fresh, uplifting content.